So, J-Hope recently got conscripted into the ROK Army. ROK Army, ROK, stands for Republic of Korea, which is the official name of South Korea. His first day at the boot camp is said to be April 18th. The Korean Army basic training is 5 weeks long, so he's probably done with the basic training by now. He's probably either been assigned to his permanent base at this point or is in the process of going through additional training if he has been chosen for some specialized area. When I joined the ROK Army many years ago, the memory of which I don't like to recall so much, I was sent to, not my choice, the Army's special school for additional 4-week training after completing the basic 5-week training. Jin apparently has become a drill instructor, I hear, which means that he completed his basic training with flying colors and showed a lot of leadership. He was probably recruited by the drill instructor team there during the last phase of the basic training. That's a pretty big deal. And also, being a drill instructor is considered a pretty tough job in the army, so it looks like he's decided to challenge himself. Good for him. Way to go, Jin. So, what's the deal with this military duty in Korea? Let me give you a quick history lesson here. So, South Koreans, unfortunately, live right next to North Koreans, the world's most secluded state. After the Koreans finally got their country back after a long occupation by the Japanese military in 1945, the occupation went from 1910 to 1945. By the way, this is not your fault, Japanese people and Japanese BTS fans. We are all one under BTS's music, and Japan has some of the most dedicated and amazing fans. Anyhow, so after getting our country back, Korea entered into a very chaotic period of ideological and political turmoil. I'm really oversimplifying here because I don't want to dive too deep into the history, but basically, people with a socialist ideology lived in the north, while people who embraced the US-style democracy lived in the south, including the leaders. Then one day, in 1950, the north suddenly attacked the south. We had nothing, no proper weapons, no equipment, and the soldiers were not properly trained, obviously. This was less than 5 years after Korea finally got their country back from the Japanese. And then the Americans came to rescue. Back then, the US also had mandatory military service requirements. So the US-led UN troops and South Korean troops together, we pushed back hard, but the Chinese got involved. The Chinese came to support the North Koreans. The Chinese troops pushed back. After 3 long years of fighting, both sides decided to pause the war. Over 30,000 American troops died and nearly 100,000 wounded for an unknown country in Asia, while about 500,000 Korean civilians and another 500,000 South Korean soldiers died. You see, this is why South Koreans have a special heart for America. No other foreign nation suffered that much casualties to help this little unknown Asian country. After the war, the American troops remained and kept us safe, while the Germans in the 1960s gave us some money and allowed us to work there as mine workers and nurses who sent their hard-earned money to the Korean government. To sort of return the favor to the US, South Korea sent its troops to Vietnam during the Vietnam War to support the US troops. Many South Korean troops died there. My dad also fought in Vietnam and was injured there. Wars can bring out the best and worst in people. Many innocent Vietnamese civilians were killed during the war, which is very heartbreaking. Anyhow, so these nurses and mine workers in Germany sending their money back to Korea, and the South Korean soldiers in Vietnam sending their paychecks from the UN, which were quite significant because South Korea was one of the most impoverished countries in the whole world, GDP smaller than many African nations at the time. This collective effort money helped to kickstart our economy and modernization. And South Korea has some leaders who were very savvy and had a very enlightened view on getting the country out of poverty. They were no perfect by any means, but they do deserve credit for establishing the foundation for the country to grow in such a short period of time. Now, South Korea is in the top 10 largest economies in the world, with this tiny land about the size of Oregon and relatively small population. And this was all achieved within 60 to 70 something years, within 3 generations, a truly remarkable and miraculous feat. Anyhow, remember I said the war was put on hold? Unfortunately, no peace treaty was signed between the two countries, so we are technically still at war. This is why the strength of the military and service by young men and women are so critical to the safety and the very existence of South Korea, and the laws around that requirement are understandably quite strict, and violations of which can be very severe. So let's talk about the military duty exemption rules in Korea, which have drawn a lot of criticism lately. As a musician/artist, there is one way for you to get exempt from the military service in Korea. If you win the first prize award at one of the selected local classical music competitions, you get exempt. But these local competitions, I'm sure they're very, very tough to win those, but you just cannot compare them to more prestigious international competitions like Van Cliburn, Chopin, Tchaikovsky competitions. They're just national competitions, and the odds of these first prize winners becoming world-renowned artists are very, very slim. But the raison d'etre of this special military duty exemption law is to help these young artists continue to grow, because taking 2 years out of their artistic journey can be devastating, right? And hopefully they'll become famous and represent Korea someday. So, if that's the rationale, how is it that BTS, who is probably and arguably the biggest thing ever happened to the pop music scene since the Beatles, and they have literally put Korean music, if not Korea, on the map, how is it that they don't get this exemption? To me, this is nothing more than a form of discrimination against pop music and its artists. These old, stiff-necked, closed-minded lawmakers in Korea still believe deep down that classical music is somehow superior. Listen, I love classical music. Like 99% of other Korean kids, I too was forced to play the piano. I used to play classical music. I still listen to Bach, Chopin, Mozart on a daily basis when I'm working. I followed the recent Van Cliburn piano competition and actually cried for the first time watching the first prize winner, a 19-year-old from Korea, Yu-chan Lim, play Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 3. If you like classical music, go watch that now on YouTube. It's absolutely insane. Hands down, the best Rachmaninoff ever. And yes, I love classical music, and I have a tremendous respect for classical music artists. But BTS not getting the exemption really upsets me. I feel like I've earned the right to say this because I served in the Korean Army many, many years ago. I'm a proud ROK Army veteran, honorably discharged. I worked as a language specialist in the ROK Army. The current exemption law is grossly outdated and unfair. I don't know how else you can describe it. You know, as much as I love Korea, although I'm also culturally and linguistically American in many ways, I have to admit that some things are so backwards in Korea, and it angers me. Because I feel like they're dragging themselves down, basically, and I tend to put a lot of that blame on these career politicians in Korea. I have absolutely no respect for them. They think money grows on tax trees. They probably couldn't even tell you balance sheets from bed sheets. So let's talk about the basic training. You know, just to give you a sense of what Jin and J-Hope have gone through. There are a few Army basic training camps in Korea, but you all get virtually the same training wherever you end up going to. Some camps are known to be tougher than others, but not by much. Some camps definitely do have better facilities than others, though. I received my training at one of the largest camps in Korea a long, long time ago when Korean army uniform looked like this. And even more dreadful, our army gym uniform looked like this. We actually call them tteokbokki, which is the famous Korean spicy rice cake dish, because of this uncanny resemblance of the color between the two. Oh man, this really brings me back some memories here. You see how the uniform Jin and J-Hope are wearing looks much more modern and cooler? And the barracks were built in the 1970s when I was there. Absolutely horrible conditions. Bathrooms are disgusting. I'm pretty sure those old barracks have been demolished at this point and they built new ones. During the first week, the drill instructors, they do a lot of yelling and make the new trainees do push-ups to set the mood and get them disciplined, from the get-go. You are no longer children. You are going to grow up fast here because you're going to protect this country from the enemies. Your mommies and daddies are not going to help you. Blah, blah, blah. Sounds very cliche, but it actually happens. During the first and second week, I think there were a lot of basic physical training involved. Running, push-ups, sit-ups, etc. A lot of formation marching too. Left, right, left, right, left, right. I just absolutely hated that. It's basically designed to build your patience and strengthen your focus because these instructors, they trick you. They change directions and foot orders suddenly, like left, right, right, left, right, things like that, while singing these awful military songs. I had a hard time with this because I had just come from the States and my Korean was quite rusty, and these drill instructors had awful pronunciation. You know how when you watch an American movie about the military, the drill instructor character is always yelling something, Private moron, do you understand the words coming out of my mouth, blah, blah, blah. And it's hard to make out what they are actually saying. I personally experienced the Korean version of that. So I got yelled at a lot because I couldn't understand what they were saying. Hey, instead of yelling at me, how about you enunciate a little, buddy? Where in the world did you learn Korean? Anyhow, towards the end of the second week or during the third week, you start learning the basics of weaponry, how to assemble your rifle, and a lot of pre-shooting exercises, which can be pretty exhausting. But the training I received was actually incredibly good. During the third or fourth week, I think, you get to finally shoot the gun. And I think we had to hit at a minimum 12 out of 20 targets to pass. But you should be getting about 15 or above. I hit all 20. Listen, I couldn't believe it either as I was shooting the rifle. I remember being surprised by my own shooting. There were 3 other guys in my regiment who also shot the perfect score. But like I said, the pre-shooting training we received was very effective. They teach you how to hold a rifle steadily, how to control your breathing while focusing in on a target, how to pull the trigger, things like that. And then there was the grenade throwing. That was the scariest part of the training. We trained for a whole week and we marched several miles to this deep pit with water, like a big reservoir. And as we were getting close to that, we heard these thunderous sounds of grenades exploding. And we started feeling the vibration on the ground too. It was very, very intimidating and scary. But, we got that done without any accident, thank God. I would say that was probably the most intimidating part of the training. I think the last part of the training was the long distance marching with this super heavy backpack and your rifle. In full gear, basically. Something like 20 kilometers during the day, and another 20 kilometers at night, I think. My memory escapes me, but I just remember walking a lot, and my shoulders, my legs were killing me. Oh, there's also the obstacle course during the last phase of the training, but that wasn't too bad. I actually had a lot of fun with that. The long distance march was really brutal. The thing is, you get new uniform and boots on the first day of the camp, right? And 4 or 5 weeks are not really enough to fully break in those hard leather boots. And if you walk in them for that long, you get blisters all over your feet. I remember when I asked my drill instructor if I could just put some band-aids on my blisters, and he told me that if they are smaller than the 500 Korean won coin, which is about the size of a quarter, I couldn't have any band-aid. So, a bunch of us on my squad, we just used our sewing kits. So we just used our sewing needle to pop them and squeeze the fluid out during a short break, and we just kept on walking with pain. I tell you what though, during the night marching, they gave us a bag of ganbang. These are just really awful, bland tasting Korean military cookies. They actually taste like underbaked pieces of very floury dough. But they also gave us a Snickers bar. I can never forget eating those during a break. Even though the ganbang pieces are quite bland, you have all that super sugar of Snickers bar, so they go very well together. And I still get emotional about Snickers bar. It was really, really sweet, literally and emotionally. I think the biggest challenge and most difficult aspect of the Korean Army life for most of the guys is not the physical training or the job itself. Of course, there can be, not always, some bullying or hazing, but for the most part, they're pretty subtle and mild, and it's not too stressful to deal with. If excessive, however, you have a means to protect yourself by reporting to the officers at the base or reporting to the military ethics compliance, via hotline. The biggest challenge is the loneliness and feeling isolated. I mean, even for an average person like me who does not have a glamorous life of an international superstar, the dichotomy between the life outside the base and inside the base was so painfully draconian. For me, it was emotionally and mentally difficult to deal with at first, especially during the 5-week training at the boot camp. Apparently, though, the Korean military began allowing the enlisted guys to keep their cell phones a few years ago, which sounds pretty crazy to me. I think it could be a security nightmare, but I'm sure they know how to deal with that. I hope. I'm sure it helps the guys. Not sure how much that helps though. As civilians, Jin and J-Hope, they could just put on a mask and a hat and go for a bike ride at Han River and have delicious Korean food delivered to their apartment and watch their favorite TV shows and take a nap on their comfortable couch during their free time. But those little pieces of freedom and convenience you got as a civilian, you have none of that in the army. No matter how much of preferential treatment Jin and J-Hope may get at their base because of their status outside the military, it will be a challenge for them. I actually have something in common with Jin and J-Hope with respect to serving in the Korean Army, even though that was really long time ago. I was their age too. I was like 29 or 30 years old when I joined. I think I was one of the oldest guys at the boot camp, which means that they're much older than most of the guys at their base. On average, the guys they live and work with will be 7 to 10 years younger than them. So it will be difficult for them to feel comfortable around them. And then they're being huge world stars. The other guys might not feel very comfortable talking to them, right? Then there's the language issue. The Korean honorifics. The honorifics are certain words, titles, phrases, and verb variations that are used when talking to someone higher up in the social hierarchy. If you are a civilian, someone younger than you will use the honorifics to you. In the military, age is meaningless, as it should be. It's all about the ranks, right? So someone even 10 years younger than you with a higher rank. Oh, you know what? It's not just the higher rank. Even if you are of the same rank, but say that person joined the army 1 month before you, you still have to salute him. And that person is considered to have a higher rank than you. Jin and J-Hope are probably still private or private first class, which are the bottom rungs in the army society. So they have to use the honorifics to higher ranking guys who might be 10 years younger than them, which is hard getting used to. These 19 or 20-year-old kids with higher ranks, they talk to you like you are a little kid and they order you around, right? So for Jin and J-Hope, they really have to swallow all their pride and have this supernatural Jesus-like heart and forgiveness to work and live with these younger guys. Oh, by the way, you don't have your own room or bathroom either, so you'll be sharing a room with 8 to 12 other guys. When I was in the army, if you were private, you couldn't just lie down and watch the TV like the way you do in your own home when there were much higher ranking guys in the room, because that would be considered very rude and cheeky. So there are a lot of these unwritten rules you have to follow. One of my subscribers mentioned that BTS seems to be quite concerned about how their 2-year absence would affect their relationship with the fans. Their concern is not completely unfounded. I've seen Korean celebrities losing their, the momentum of their fame after the 2-year absence in the military. But I've also seen cases where these celebrities make remarkable comeback too. So it varies from person to person, I think. As for BTS, I'm not worried about that at all. They are on whole another level in terms of their fan base and their talent. The Korean military has never had celebrities of this magnitude before. So it'll be interesting to see how the military, the army, handles the situation. But like I said, weathering through this period of loneliness and isolation is not gonna be a walk in the park. They'll have to constantly fight this emotional and psychological battle every day. If I could give one piece of advice or words of encouragement to Jin and J-Hope, I don't know if you're listening. 형이 한 가지만 조언을 해줄 수가 있다면, I really believe that going through this period will only make you stronger and help you become even better persons and better superstars. Think about your family. Think about your BTS 동생s. Think about all these amazing fans of yours eagerly waiting for you and praying for you. Oh, by the way, my YouTube channel analytics and subscriber comments show that BTS fans' age ranges from 12 to 70. I mean, you guys might be the only band in the history of pop music whom grandmas, moms, and daughters, all 3 generations, love together at the same time. I mean, this is completely unheard of. My best friend's mom is case in point. Apparently, she's a huge fan of BTS and she doesn't really listen to the typical music of her generation. She just likes BTS, and apparently there are a lot of them like that. Are you guys aware of this, by the way? Is your company Big Hit Entertainment aware of this amazing fact? I don't want to digress too much, but by the way, if any of you or anyone from Big Hit Entertainment is watching this, please consider making some special accommodation for the older fans for future BTS concerts. Many of them will not be able to camp out for days to buy tickets, like these dedicated fans did in Chicago recently. But these older fans, they would kill to go to one of your concerts. I'm sure these amazing, kind-hearted, younger BTS fans will be very understanding of that as well. Jin and J-Hope, hang in there, guys. You can do this. We're all very proud of you. Hang in there. Your fans will still be here. As a young 군대 선배, a fan of BTS, I'm also very proud of you. I appreciate your service, and you're gonna come out of this much stronger and better persons. And I'm absolutely confident that you will complete the service successfully.